Chapter 50-50. It was too kind. It said that it wanted to divorce its wife. It said that the most regretful thing it had ever done in its life was to marry a promiscuous wife. It was cuckolded all day long, and its head was turning green like a prairie. Hei Shinjo said with her lips curled. The woman screamed sharply, "What? How dare that bastard say that? It has been fooling around outside all day, so why should I guard it? Furthermore, we fox couples have always been playing by ourselves. Why does he have to divorce me? HMH, I know now. It must be you who is spouting nonsense. It's impossible for husband to say something like that." Yun Chujo spread her hands. "Believe it or not, that's what he said. Furthermore, if he wasn't trying to avoid you, why did he run to a lower continent and get trapped by someone? What do you know? Isn't it the same as back then?" The woman suddenly covered her head in pain. "Back then? What happened back then? Why can't I remember anything?" Yun Chujo frowned. This was not the first time she had seen such a situation. What kind of person could leave a mark in these ancient divine beasts or human spiritual senses and prevent them from telling the truth? What kind of terrifying power was this? The woman's expression became more and more painful. She even directly transformed into her beast form and kept rolling on the ground. Yun Chujo never knew what it meant to not take advantage of others when they were in danger. She immediately gestured to everyone and they all rushed forward. The eight-tailed celestial fox's spiritual sense was in great pain, so its strength was greatly reduced. In the end, it was killed by everyone. However, everyone was stunned to find that after the eight-tailed celestial fox died, there was no corpse on the ground. It actually disappeared into thin air. This should only be the remnant soul of the eight-tailed celestial fox. After all, if it was really an eight-tailed celestial fox, how could we be her match? Yun Chujo said. Everyone thought about it and realized that it made sense. Although the eight-tailed celestial fox was slightly weaker than the divine beast, the strength of an adult eight-tailed celestial fox was also very terrifying. How could it be killed so easily? Although Yun Chujo had many questions in her heart, she was pressed for time and did not have the time to think carefully. She immediately led everyone to the stairs leading to the third floor. When they arrived, the sky had already darkened. Everyone decided to continue their journey after daybreak. When Go-Wei Batsao heard this, she immediately felt that the opportunity to show off her skills had arrived. Didn't the little girl say it before? Destroying the steps was a good thing. Then it would go and destroy the steps at night to help the smelly girl. Go-Wei Batsao simply felt that it was too kind. Thus, after Hei Shinjo fell asleep, Go-Wei Batsao jumped towards the steps. According to its previous experience, it successfully destroyed the stairs again. Go-Wei Batsao looked at the ruins on the ground and was quite proud. As the saying went, once the dog tail appeared, who could compete with it? Yun Chujo and the others were stationed not far from here, so they rushed over when they heard the noise. Why did the stairs collapse again? Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Lan Luomu said in surprise. Yeah, it's really strange. Every time when we were resting, the stairs would be destroyed, Lan Luoji echoed. Yun Chujo narrowed her eyes. What on earth was going on? She ordered the group to search through the ruins and found another bead and fragments of the formation plate. It was almost the same as the previous stairs. Chapter 50-51, Go-Wei Batsao, Little Jiu, didn't you say it before? It's a good thing that the steps are ruined. Maybe the heavens are helping us. Lan Luofang said. The Go-Wei Batsao in the grass was quite proud. It was not the help of the heavens, but the meritorious service here. Yun Chujo did not say anything. There must be something wrong. She always felt that it was not that simple. At this moment, Yun Chujia's spiritual sense transmitted the excited voice of the rolling pin, Master, I have good news for you. I'm going to break through. Yun Chujo lost contact with the rolling pin before she could reply. To be exact, the weapon spirit of the rolling pin was in a state of hibernation. Yun Chujo, she took out the rolling pin and muttered, Baby rolling pin, grow longer. Grow longer. Rui rolling pin, grow longer and longer. My little cutie, grow longer. However, after repeating it more than 10 times, the rolling pin was still. The rolling pin. The Lan family members had a bad feeling. Lan Luofang asked with a trembling voice, "Little Jiu, is there something wrong with your rolling pin?" Yun Chujiu showed an awkward but polite smile. "It's not a big problem. It's just that it can't grow longer." Everyone. This wasn't a big problem. It was a big problem. If the rolling pin couldn't grow any longer, how were they supposed to get up there? The head of Gowei Butsao in the haystack buzzed. It was over. It wasn't helping. It wasn't its fault. If anyone was to blame, it would be that damned rolling pin. When was a bad time to break through? Why did it have to break through at this time? What else could a rolling pin do if it broke through again? At most, it would turn into a burning pin. Besides, the smelly girl didn't know that it did it anyway. As long as it didn't say anything, only heaven and earth would know. What was there to be afraid of? With this thought, Gowei Butsao immediately calmed down and hid in the bushes to watch the show. Everyone was frowning. The second level was more than 100 feet high from the third level. Without the rolling pin, how were they going to get up there? Yun Chujiu didn't have any ideas for the time being. She had tried the little Wu Yun before, but the little Wu Yun couldn't fly at all. Clearly, it was restricted here. Just as Yun Chujiu was frowning, the little silver snake in her sleeve pocket struggled a few times. Yun Chujiu frowned. What was this pretty boy doing? Didn't he know that she was troubled? However, she still walked to the side and took out the small silver snake with her back facing the crowd. She said snappily, "Pretty boy, what do you want to do? Don't you know that I'm busy right now?" The small silver snake's vertical pupils immediately turned cold as it said in a cold tone, "I just want to remind you that the rolling pin is just a long rod. When you connect the bamboo pole or the wooden rod, the effect should be the same." When Yun Chujiu heard that, she immediately slapped her thigh. That's right. She was really stupid. She had everything in her storage ring. Couldn't she just randomly find some bamboo poles to connect them together? When this fellow saw the little silver snake's cold gaze, he immediately said guiltily, "Gigolo, no, my dear Prince Charming, I was wrong. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. You're a grown-up and don't remember me for my past transgressions, so don't hold it against me." The little silver snake's gaze was still cold. This ugly girl was getting more and more overboard. He had to let her know what it meant to be a husband. Chapter 50-52 will be discussed later. He Xinjiu saw that the little silver snake did not make a sound, and his eyes were still cold. She said flatteringly, "Male god, you are indeed my male god. Not only are you beautiful, but you are also extremely wise. Fortunately, I am not a man. Otherwise, I would be ashamed to live compared to you." The little silver snake still did not make a sound, but the coldness in his eyes had faded a lot. "My Prince Charming, it's a good thing that you're by my side. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to think of a solution even if I racked my brains. You're really too smart." The coldness in the little silver snake's eyes had faded a lot, and only a little bit of its face remained. "You're such an outstanding man, but you're actually my fiancé. I'm so honored. Prince Charming, come, let's kiss." The silver snake saw Yun Chujiu's pouty lips coming over and immediately slipped back into its sleeve pocket. It stuttered, "Next time, it won't happen again." Yun Chujiu pursed her lips. "You're a tsundere. I can't control you." Although this fellow thought so in his heart, he said obediently on the surface, "I know. It'll definitely change my past in the future." The little silver snake pretended to be aloof and acknowledged, but its body was suffused with a faint pink color. He thought to himself, no matter what, the ugly girl had already admitted her mistake. As for the matter of Fu Gang, he should talk about it in the future. After Yun Chujo fawned on a certain someone, she returned to the place where everyone was gathered and explained Di Baiming's method. Everyone was stunned at first, then they were overjoyed. That's right, they were really one-track minded. They could totally use something else to replace the rolling pin. The Gowei Batsao in the bushes also let out a sigh of relief. Let's see, wasn't the final result still good? That was why Go Weiba was a great fortune. It could always turn a disaster into a blessing. It was simply wonderful. At this time, it was almost dawn. Everyone was not in the mood to sleep anymore. They quickly tied the bamboo pole that Yun Chujo took out together. After finishing, Yun Chujo tested the sturdiness of the bamboo poles before putting Xiao Hei on it. However, to be on the safe side, she also placed a lot of gunny sacks underneath. The gunny sacks were filled with soft cotton. Everyone looked at the pile of gunny sacks with an interesting expression on their faces. This storage ring of the troublemaker was like a treasure chest. How could it contain so much cotton? They did not know that Hei Shinjo had experienced too many things. As a precautionary measure, the storage ring could be said to have everything. Xiao Hei successfully jumped onto the third level of the levitation layer and pulled everyone up. The third level's building was obviously much more luxurious than the two lower levels. However, everyone was not too interested in it. They only wanted to find the teleportation enchantment at the exit as soon as possible. Therefore, when everyone learned from Lan Luomu that there was no portal on the third floor, they immediately rushed to the entrance to the fourth floor. However, they soon saw that there was a lot of blood on the blue stone in front of them, as well as a few corpses. What surprised everyone was that the cause of death of those corpses was actually the spiritual power of the cultivators. Could it be that the Mu family and others had an internal conflict? Lan Luoyen spat, "Dogs biting dogs, serves you right." As soon as she finished speaking, someone cried out in shock, What's wrong with you? Why do you look exactly like me? Who are you?" Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and saw that the woman who spoke looked exactly like Lan Luoyen. Whether it was her appearance, voice, or expression, they were exactly the same. Chapter 50-53, Who is the Fake? Lan Luoyen number 1's face was filled with anger. "You are the fake. I'm going to kill you." "Kill me? I'm going to kill you. How dare you pretend to be me? You must be tired of living." Lan Luoyen number 2 said, unwilling to be outdone. Everyone was dumbfounded. Why were there two Lan Luoyen? Lan Luomu and Lan Luoqing separated the two of them and then looked at Yun Chujo. "Captain, which of these two is real?" Yun Chujo narrowed her eyes. Just as she was about to speak, another round of chaos broke out. Lan Luomu and the others had also turned into two. The scene was noisy, and some of them had already started fighting. Yun Chujo shouted sternly, "Stop! Whoever fights again will be a fake." However, a voice sounded beside her. "You bastard, how dare you pretend to be my little fairy Jo? Are you tired of living?" Yun Chujo turned her head and saw a woman who looked exactly like her standing beside her. She was scolding her with her hands on her waist, just like how she usually looked in the mirror. Yun Chujo curled her lips. Interesting, there are actually people who dare to pretend to be me in this world. The impostor curled his lips. "I wanted to give you these words. Where did you get the courage to pretend to be me? Shameless." For a moment, the scene was in chaos. Some people had already started to fight again. Yun Chujo narrowed her eyes. She had to quickly control the situation, or the consequences would be unimaginable. She looked at the impostor and directly struck out several bolts of lightning. Who would have thought that the impostor would also return Yun Chujo a few bolts of lightning? Yun Chuji's heart was shocked. This impostor's imitation was so real that it could even imitate a spiritual root. However, even if it could imitate, it probably wouldn't be able to imitate the small flame in her palm. When Yun Chujo thought of this, when she attacked again, it was directly mixed with the flame of the small flame. As expected, the impostor didn't think that Yun Chujo would actually have a small flame, and it was burned directly. At this moment, Yun Chujo had Xiao Hanyo curse her. She took the opportunity when the impostor was staggering and killed him. However, she was surprised to find that after the impostor died, there was a pearl on the ground. It was actually a paranoia beast. After killing the impostor, Yun Chujo shouted, "Everyone stop. If anyone continues to attack, it means that he is an impostor." Hearing that, everyone stopped and stared at each other indignantly. Yun Chujo narrowed her eyes. How could she tell who was real and who was fake? Yun Chujo called the two Lan Luofang to the front and asked, "Each of you tell me something that only she and I know." Lan Luofang no. One said, "Little Jiu, I've cut down the immortal wood with you and found a simple and convenient way." Yun Chujo nodded. Only she and Lan Luofang knew this. This should be true. At this moment, Lan Luofang number 2 said, "Little Jiu, you and I killed a fox and a beast on the flat street. You even stabbed me with a needle." When Yun Chujo heard this, it was true. Only she and Lan Luofang knew this. Then, the question was, who was the real one? Seeing that Yun Chujo was hesitating, Lan Luofang number 1 quickly said, "Little Jiu, I went to my grandfather's house previously. It was you who sent me a message, so I rushed back." Lan Luofang number 2 was not willing to be outdone. "Little Jiu, you were afraid that I would be in danger, so you gave me a lot of chili noodles. You even told me to run if I couldn't beat you." Yun Chujia's eyes flashed. She probably already knew who the impostor was. Chapter 50-54 was exposed. The Lan Luofang, who spoke later, was talking about what happened in Supreme City, so most of it was fake. However, to be on the safe side, Yun Chujo decided to test it again. Therefore, she said to Lan Luofang number 2, "I gave you a phoenix hairpin before, take it out and let me have a look." Lan Luofang number 2's face stiffened, and she said with a dry smile, "Little Jiu, I left it at home and didn't bring it over." Hearing this, Yun Chujo raised her hand and shot out several bolts of lightning. There were small flames mixed within. Seeing this, Lan Luofang number 1 also rushed forward to help. She even shouted, "Little Jiu is an iron rooster. Why would she give me a hairpin?" Yun Chujo, if she had known this would happen, she would have kept that fake. Lan Luofang number 2 was naturally not a match for Yun Chujo and Lan Luofang. She was killed very quickly. Yun Chujo realized that these imposters were obviously good at mimicry, but in fact, their abilities were not that great. She looked at the rest of the people and curled the corners of her lips. "I have 10,000 ways to tell who is real and who is fake, so I advise you to take the initiative to leave. Otherwise, the previous two will end up like you." She did not know if she was scared by Yun Chujia's words, but 6 people immediately ran away. Yun Chujo did not chase after them, but shouted, "Tell your companions not to provoke me, or else one of them will die. I will make you extinct." It was unknown if it was an illusion, but everyone realized that the 6 people ran even faster. In fact, Yun Chujo had an even faster method, which was to let everyone summon the spirit beasts that she had rented to them previously. Those imposters naturally could not do it. However, it seemed that those imposters were very timid and actually ran away after a scare. "Everyone, be careful. Don't act alone, lest you are killed by someone and then pretend to be someone else," Yun Chujo said seriously. Everyone nodded in agreement. This supreme city was indeed strange. There was actually such an incredible beast. Lan Luofang asked in puzzlement, "Little Jiu, the corpses that we saw earlier were all killed by cultivator spiritual power. What happened? Were they killed by those imposters?" Yun Chujo shook her head. "Those imposters aren't very capable. It's highly likely that they were imposters who instigated a rift or deliberately provoked a fight, causing Mu Zian and the others to have internal strife. The members of the Lan family couldn't help but feel some lingering fear. Fortunately, they had already submitted to Yun Chujo, so Yun Chujo gave the order and no one attacked anymore. Otherwise, there would probably be some casualties." When it was almost evening, everyone rushed to the center of the third level. They did not find a step, but they saw an old man with triangular eyes. San Jiaoyan. The old man looked at everyone and then said, "You want to go to the fourth level of the levitation layer?" Lan Luomu and the others did not say anything and looked at Yun Chujiu. Yun Chujiu said with a smile, "Yes, we want to go to the fourth level of the levitation layer. If you can meet my conditions, I will send you up. Otherwise, you can only stay in the third level," said the old man. "Oh. What conditions?" Yun Chujiu raised her eyebrows and asked. "I don't have any other hobbies. I just like young and beautiful women. You only need to keep one woman as my concubine, and I will let you up." As the old man spoke, he looked at Lan Luoyan and Lan Luofang with malicious intent. Chapter 50-55, Kill Lan Luoyan and Lan Luofang were embarrassed and annoyed by his gaze. They wished they could just kill him. However, Yun Chujiu had not spoken yet, so they could not make a move. Yun Chujiu laughed lightly. "Did the previous group of people leave anyone for you?" The old man's face revealed a hint of perversity. "Of course. However, that little girl could not take it anymore and was already played to death by me." Yun Chujiu thought to herself that Mu Zian and the others had used human lives to pave the way. She wanted to see how they would climb up after all their people had died. "I like people with good figures. Let's keep her." The old man pointed at Lan Luoyan. Lan Luoyan was about to go crazy from anger. She cursed, "You old shameless man. Dream on." The old man let out a strange laugh. "No matter how you curse, you're still my people. Because without me, you won't be able to find the way up. You can only die trapped on the third floor." Yun Chujiu looked at the sky. If they held on tight, they could reach the fourth floor before it was completely dark. Therefore, they did not have the patience to deal with the old man. Therefore, she said, "Kill him." The old man could not believe his ears. While resisting the attacks of the crowd, he shouted in exasperation, "If you kill me, you won't be able to find the way up." Gowei Batsao, who was hiding in Yun Chujiu's hair, shook its leaves. What an idiot! The stupid girl did not need any stairs at all. However, there were no stairs here, so there was no place for Go Weiba to use its tail. When the old man saw that the crowd was really going to kill him, he did not know what method he used to disappear on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already dozens of feet away. The old man said coldly, "What a bunch of people who don't know life and death. I want to see how you guys are going to go up." Lan Luoyan was about to chase after him, but Yun Chujiu stopped her, "Don't fall for it. If you are alone, those imposters might take advantage of the situation and enter. Don't bother with him." Lan Luoyan stomped her feet angrily, "Then we will let this old pervert have it easy. I can't wait to kill him." Yun Chujiu chuckled. "They're just a bunch of pitiful creatures. Why bother with him? Let's go up before the sky turns completely dark." When the old man heard Yun Chujiu's words, he could not help but be stunned. Then, a cold smile appeared on his face. Yun Chujiu did the same thing. She propped up the bamboo pole and sent Xiaohei up. The old man pursed his lips. What was the use of getting such a small thing up there? Could it be that they wanted it to fix the rope somewhere? Then they had made a mistake. There was no place on the rope that could fix the rope. Yun Chujiu had long thought of this. Hence, she let the others go up first while she stayed at the end. Seeing that Yun Chujiu was the only one left, the old man said with a fake smile, "Little girl, although your figure is not that good, your looks are not bad, so you can stay." Yun Chujiu was once again stepped on by the cat's tail, so she was naturally not in a good mood. She sneered, "Really? That depends on whether you have the ability." Yun Chujiu directly summoned Little Slut number 2 to Little Slut number 9. 8 flying swords suddenly flew out and all of them stabbed at the old man. At the same time, Yun Chujiu shot out several bolts of lightning and several small purple needles. There were also small flames mixed in between them. Go-Wei Butsao was so anxious. Why didn't this stupid girl let it go? If it was let out, wouldn't it be able to save up some money again? Chapter 50-56 Go-Wei Butsao lost its way. The old man did not put Yun Chuzhou in his eyes at all, so for a moment, he was confused by her endless tricks. Each of these tricks was more and more rare, he had never seen them before. Therefore, before he could even use his supernatural power, he was killed just like that. Yun Chuzhou picked up the Wanzhou on the ground and was dragged up by Xiao He. Go-Wei Butsao thought angrily, that old thing is really useless. He was actually killed just like that. Why don't you just hop around for a while longer? Maybe the smelly girl will let him out. However, Go-Wei Butsao soon lost the mood to complain because it was stunned by the situation on the 4th level. Yun Chuzhou and the others were also stunned. Even in their dreams, they never thought that the 4th level of the levitation layer would be so beautiful. The ground was covered with exotic flowers and plants. There were carved beams and picturesque buildings. There were also wisps of clouds and mist floating around. Under the setting sun, it was exactly the same as the fairyland they had imagined. Lan Luofang said hesitantly, "It's so beautiful. It's really the same as the fairyland." The others also chimed in. Although the 3rd level was luxurious, it was still tainted by the worldly aura. The 4th level was different. It had an extraordinary feeling. Just as everyone was sighing, Yun Chuzhou said faintly, "Don't be fooled by appearances. Be careful." Everyone's hearts trembled and they immediately became vigilant. For the sake of being careful, Yun Chuzhou decided to rest at the same place and set off the next day at dawn. As the situation was unknown, Yun Chuzhou specially arranged for Lan Luocheng, Lan Luoji, and Lan Luomu to be on guard at night. When the Guai Chao and Yun Chujia's hair saw that the night was getting dark, she could not help but jump onto the ground again, preparing to walk around. This guy left the small square where everyone was resting and went to a bush of flowers in front. When this guy saw the bright flowers, his face was full of disdain. A group of coquettish bitches. How could they be as reserved and dignified as Go-Wei Butsao? This fellow thought as he hopped to the nearest pavilion. This was an extremely exquisite pavilion. There was a plaque hanging on the front door. Of course, Go-Wei Butsao was illiterate and did not recognize it at all. Go-Wei Butsao was not interested in these things. It ran from room to room. It was surprised to find that the things inside were actually perfectly preserved. It was as if everything had been sealed by time. Although Go-Wei Butsao was quite intelligent, it was also a little clever. It could not understand things that were too complicated, and it was too lazy to think about it. Seeing that it was not interested in anything, it wanted to leave. However, it found that it was lost. No matter how it turned, it could not turn out. It even looked at the direction of the moon in the sky, but it still could not turn out. Go-Wei Butsao could not help but feel sad. It was over. It was trapped here. Although it was only formed from spiritual power and not the original form of the Guai Chao, this little treasury was very difficult to gather. It was simply a waste of God's gift to be trapped here. The next morning, everyone washed up and began to set off. The Guai Chao and Yun Chujia's Dantian was very conflicted. Should it remind the stinky girl not to enter that courtyard? If the stinky girl entered the courtyard, she might be able to save its little treasury. However, doing so seemed to be a little unorthodox. Some of it was not worthy of its lofty grass grid. Before the Guai Chao could think of a plan, Yun Chuzhou and the others had already discovered the pavilion. Chapter 50-57, The Celestial Master's Mansion. With Buttface's help, Yun Chuzhou recognized the 3 words on the plaque, the Celestial Master's Mansion. Yun Chuzhou burst into laughter. The Celestial Master's Mansion? There are so-called Celestial Masters in this supreme land? The small silver snake in Yun Chujia's sleeve suddenly struggled. Yun Chuzhou walked to the side and picked up the small silver snake. Little White, He Xinjiu saw Di Baiming's deep gaze and laughed dryly. Prince Charming, what are your orders? Di Biming snorted coldly. I heard from Buttface that you once found a pair of grandfathers and grandsons who were both spirit masters Yen, right? Previously on Mount Meru, Yun Chujiu had been struck by lightning. Buttface had told Di Biming many things about Yun Chujiu, and this was one of them. Yun Chujiu nodded. That's right. One is Ziheng's younger brother, and the other is Ziheng's grandfather. Why do you suddenly think of them? I vaguely remember that although the Spirit Master Yen clan is not a celestial race, the best among them were given the title of Celestial Master and were given the same treatment as the Celestials. You mean that the previous owner of this Celestial Master mansion was Spirit Master Yen? Yun Chujiu asked in surprise. That's right. If my memory is correct, it should be like this. Di Biming's memories were only appearing little by little after the seal was broken, so he was not sure. Yun Chujiu blinked her eyes. I remember you once told me that you might need Spirit Master Yen in the future. What do you plan to do with them? Di Biming shook his head. I don't know either. Just like how I know that those bones are useful to me, I have a vague feeling that I will need Spirit Master Yen. Yun Chujiu cursed in her heart. It was as if she didn't say anything. Forget it, she couldn't be bothered to argue with an amnesia snake. However, since the gigolo said that the master of the Celestial Master Mansion was Spirit Master Yen, she had to go in and take a look. Perhaps, there might be some unexpected gains. Seeing that Yun Chujiu wanted to go in, the Guai Chao in her dantian immediately stopped struggling. It was the stupid girl who wanted to go in on her own accord. It could not be blamed. However, why was there still a tinge of guilt? Just as Yun Chujiu was about to push open the door, the Guai Chao decided to remind her. It could not be helped. It was too kind. As the Guai Chao struggled, Yun Chujiu's dantian was in pain. She guessed with her spiritual sense, is this mansion inappropriate? Guai Chao immediately used a leaf to indicate that something was wrong. Something was very wrong. When Yun Chujiu saw this, she could not help but stop in her tracks. If Go Weiba said that something was wrong, then there should really be something wrong inside. So, should she go in or not? However, this guy thought that since the Spirit Master Yen was useful to the gigolo, perhaps he could find some useful things in the Celestial Master's mansion. It was better to go in and take a look. Just as this guy was thinking, the members of the Lan family had already pushed open the door and entered. After all, she and Guai Chao were communicating with their spiritual senses. The members of the Lan family did not know about this. Seeing this, Yun Chujiu did not need to hesitate anymore. Guai Chao also heaved a sigh of relief. This was not its fault. It was this stupid girl who insisted on going in. This guy quickly directed his little treasury to run in the direction of Yun Chujiu. TSK, today was really a good day. He could do whatever he wanted. Yun Chujiu was not interested in the exquisiteness of the courtyard. She walked into the main hall opposite the main door. The furnishings in the main hall did not show any signs of being tampered with. There was even half a cup of tea in the teacup. It was as if someone was laughing and chatting with her just a moment ago. Chapter 50-58, Yen Feng. Before entering, Yun Chujiu had already instructed the Lan family members not to touch anything inside. Therefore, Lan Luofang and the others only looked around curiously. No one touched the items inside the house. Yun Chujiu and the others walked around the main hall. They did not find anything unusual, so they entered the second-floor courtyard. Gowei Batsao had hidden in the grass in the second-floor courtyard. When it saw Yun Chujiu coming over, it immediately sneakily flew onto Yun Chujiu's shoes. Everyone's attention was on the exquisite surroundings, so no one noticed Gowei Batsao. Even so, Gowei Batsao did not dare to rashly fly onto Yun Chujiu's hair. It could only sadly lie on Yun Chujiu's shoes. This fellow had made up his mind that he would never wander around again. It was too dangerous. There were many rooms in the courtyard. Yun Chujiu glanced at them and said, the rooms here are similar. In order to avoid any accidents, everyone will enter and leave together. Do not act alone. Everyone was very obedient now, so they all nodded in agreement. Go-Wei Butsao thought to himself, this stupid girl is really cunning. I just don't know if she will fall for it too. Yun Chujio led everyone into a room in the middle. It was very spacious, and the decoration was similar to the main hall. Yun Chujio led everyone to the room next door to take a look. Other than the exquisite decorations, it was no different from the layout of an ordinary mansion. Yun Chujio had no choice but to bring her people into the third courtyard. Once they entered the third-floor courtyard, one of the doors opened automatically. Everyone was shocked. Why did the door open by itself? Could there be someone inside? Yun Chujio was also shocked. She secretly walked closer and looked inside. It seemed to be a study room. The question was, should they enter or not? This guy decided to be more polite. He bowed and said, "May I ask who is in the room?" "Is it the Celestial Master?" Lan Luoyen and the others were dumbfounded. What was going on? Was the Celestial Master referring to the master of the mansion? He had died a long time ago. While everyone was thinking, an old sigh came from inside the room. "Honored guest, please come in." Everyone staggered in shock. Was there really someone inside? Yun Chujio shamelessly pointed at herself. "Honored guest, are you referring to me?" There was no reply from inside. Instead, a huge force pulled Yun Chujio inside and the door was closed again. Lan Luofang and the others were about to barge in, but they realized that they could not find the previous room. For a moment, they were burning with anxiety. After Yun Chujio entered the room, she realized that it was indeed a study room. Behind the desk stood an old man with a white beard and hair. He looked like a celestial being, just like the old celestial being that Yun Chujio had imagined. Yun Chujio was about to speak, but the old man nodded slightly. "Honored guest, greetings." Hei Shinjo could not help but feel flattered. This old man was very polite. The old man pretended to return the greeting and then asked, "Are you the Celestial Master?" The old man smiled bitterly. "Celestial Master. Honored guest, please call me Yen Feng." "Senior Yen, may I know why you called me in?" Yun Chujio naturally would not call him by his name, so she called him Senior Yen. "Honored guest, please take a seat," Yen Feng said politely. Yun Chujio didn't stand on ceremony and directly sat on the chair. She was puzzled. What did this old man want to say? Chapter 50-59, for sentences. Yen Feng only sat down when he saw Yun Chujio sit down. "Honored guest, to tell you the truth, this old man is only a remnant of my spiritual sense," Yen Feng said with a sigh. Yun Chujio had long guessed this, so she was not surprised. Yen Feng continued, "Although this old man is not proficient in learning, as a spiritual master Yen, I can also deduce some things. I am very grateful to you for saving my junior's life." Yun Chujio smiled and said, "Senior Yen, you are too polite. It is only right to see injustice on the road and lend a helping hand." This fellow thought to himself, "Io, this old man is too amazing. He can even calculate the things that will happen tens of thousands of years later." Yen Feng sighed, "Now, our spiritual master Yen clan is already very withered, right? Junior doesn't know much about the specific situation, but it seems that there are very few rumors," Yun Chujio said tactfully. Yen Feng smiled bitterly. "Honored guest, you don't have to be so cautious. Let's not talk about how you owe my junior a favor. With my identity as an honored guest, this old man wouldn't dare to act rashly. If it wasn't for the fact that my remaining spiritual sense was too weak to leave this position, this old man would have sat at the head of the honored guest." Yun Chujio was stunned. "My identity? What identity?" Yen Feng shook his head. "Honored guest, you are still so thoughtful. No wonder." Yen Feng did not continue speaking when he said this. Instead, he changed the topic. "Honored guest, I invited you in to remind you that the Divine Emperor Pavilion is fraught with danger. Don't trust others easily. Remember. Divine Emperor Pavilion? Are you talking about the 18th level? Yun Chujo asked in puzzlement. That's right. It's the highest level. That used to be the Divine Emperor Pavilion where the Emperor Shen lived. I've already calculated that if you want to leave, you have to enter the Divine Emperor Pavilion. Yan Feng said. Yun Chujo stood up and bowed respectfully. Thank you for your reminder, senior. Do you have any unfinished wishes? If you need my help, feel free to say it. Without benefits, one would not get up early. Yun Chujo felt that this old man was not just simply repaying a debt of gratitude. Yan Feng smiled and said, Honored guest, you are indeed smart. This old man does have a favor to ask of you. Because our spirit master Yen clan was able to unravel the secrets of the heavens, most of us died young. This is our fate. This old man is not the least bit unwilling. I only hope that you can protect Spirit Master Yan's family and prevent it from being exterminated due to other unforeseen circumstances, so that the Yen family's bloodline can be passed on. Yan Feng stood up and bowed solemnly. Yun Chujo quickly jumped up from the chair and moved to the side. Senior Yen, you're too polite. I'll agree. However, I'm just a little trash now. I'm afraid that I won't be of much help for the time being. Yan Feng's face stiffened and he said slowly, Honored guest, you are just a hidden dragon in the abyss. There will come a time when you will soar to the sky. Hei Xinzhou was very pleased with Yan Feng's words, but she still asked about serious matters. Senior Yen, why has this supreme city become like this? And who destroyed the God clan? Yan Feng shook his head. We can't tell you. Our honored guest will find out sooner or later. The corner of Yun Chujia's eyes twitched. It seemed like she couldn't get anything out of him, but it was good enough that she got a reminder. Yun Chujo was about to say something, but she realized that she had already arrived outside the house. However, she didn't know when, but there was a note in her hand. There were 4 sentences on it. A wild goose flies to the clouds in anger, the shadow of a branch in the west of the mountain at sunset, a pair of broken stars perches on a good tree, the world is full of strange things. Chapter 50-60 Extraterrestrial Soul. Yun Chujo looked at the piece of paper with a dumbfounded expression. This piece of paper was given to her by Yan Feng? What did it mean? At this moment, the old man's old voice came from the room. Honored guest, your identity is related to the secrets of the heavens. I can't say it out loud. Honored guest, please comprehend it on your own. Yun Chujo was stunned. Her identity? The moment she was stunned, the study room had already disappeared. It was as if everything from before was a dream. What surprised her even more was that the note in her hand had also turned into nothingness at the same time. Little Jiu, are you alright? Lan Luofang saw Yun Chujo appear out of thin air and asked with concern. Yun Chujo shook her head, but in her heart, she recalled the 4 sentences on the note. She had always been smart. With just a little thought, she had already guessed the 4 sentences. Each sentence was a word puzzle. When a single goose flew into the clouds in anger, the corresponding word for the single goose was human, while the corresponding word for the cloud was too. When it flew into the clouds, it meant that it did not have a head, and that was the word heaven. When the sun set in the west, the branches would be slanted. When the sun set in the west, it would naturally be the setting sun, and the corresponding word would be 11. When the branches were slanted, the corresponding word would be bow, and when the two combined, it would be the word outer. A pair of broken stars perched on a good tree. The broken stars corresponded to chi, and the word mu meant rice? No, the word one was specially mentioned earlier. That meant come. The world was full of miracles. Yun Bangue. This was simple. Yun Bangue was soul. Soul from the heavens? Yun Chujo thought to herself that this Yan Feng was quite capable. She had transmigrated here. Wouldn't that mean that she was a soul from the heavens? However, she vaguely felt that something was wrong. Although she had transmigrated here, wasn't she the ghost ancestor in her previous life? This was like going out and coming back. How could she be called an otherworldly soul? Thinking of this, Yun Chujo pursed her lips. This old fraud probably had a false name, making him sound so mysterious. In fact, his calculations were completely wrong. At this moment, everyone asked her what she should do next. She threw this matter to the back of her mind and treated it as if Yen Feng was deliberately mystifying things. Yun Chujo immediately led everyone out of the Celestial Master Mansion and continued to walk forward. Gowei Butsao took advantage of the opportunity when Yun Chujo was studying the crossword puzzle and finally climbed onto her head. When this fellow heard Yun Chujo say the words, extraterrestrial soul, Yi Zi trembled. She thought to herself, that old man still had some ability. Unfortunately, he was dead. From this point, it could be seen that the status of the people living on the 4th level was much higher than the people living on the 3rd level. An hour later, everyone saw the second house. The plaque said, Divine General Jin Weiss Mansion. Presumably, this Divine General should be a position of the God clan. Yun Chujo and the others wanted to quickly reach the 5th level of the levitation layer, so they did not plan to go inside. Who would have thought that the door of the mansion would open automatically? A 30 feet tall giant in armor walked out from inside. He was holding a large saber that was flashing with cold light. Everyone was so scared that they stepped back. Who was this person? Could it be that Divine General Jinwei? How dare you trespass into this God General's residence? What crime should you commit? The loud roar made everyone's ears ring. Could this person really be God General Jinwei? Yun Chujo naturally didn't believe that this person was God General Jinwei. The Celestials in this place had already died a long time ago. How could there be God General Jinwei? At most, he was just like Yen Feng. It was just a remnant of his consciousness. Chapter 5061, Divine General Jinwei, Big Brother, we didn't even enter your residence. How can we be called intruders? Yun Chujo said with a chuckle. The giant was stunned for a moment, then he roared, this area of dozens of miles is my territory. You came in without informing us. Naturally, you are intruding. Yun Chujo blinked her eyes, before us, didn't anyone pass by here? The giant frowned and thought for a moment, then shook his head. No, I haven't seen any outsiders for a long time. Yun Chujo was puzzled. Mu Zian and the others should have reached the 4th level before them. How come the giant had never seen them before? While she was deep in thought, the giant said impatiently, cut the crap. You trespassed my mansion. Come here, let me chop off your heads. Yun Chujo felt that the giant's brain did not seem to be working well, so she came up with a bad idea. She smiled and said, Master General, actually, it was Celestial Master Yen who asked us to come here. Celestial Master Yen asked you to come here? That old thing is always talking nonsense. Why did he ask you to come here? The giant asked suspiciously. Hearing his words, Yun Chujo had a rough idea in her heart. This giant should be just a remnant of his consciousness. No wonder the people in the previous trial had only seen the 3rd level of levitation. It was likely that the Celestials above the 4th level had a higher cultivation level and left a remnant of their consciousness in it. That was why they had never appeared in the world. However, why did it appear this time? Lord Divine General, Heavenly Master Yen said that your divine skills are unrivaled and your battle achievements are outstanding. In a few days, you will be promoted to a rank. He asked us to come over and congratulate you in advance, Yun Chujo said with admiration. Although she had only heard a few words from this so-called mighty divine general, Yun Chujo could already tell that he was a person who was very happy with his achievements. Sure enough, hearing Yun Chujo's words, the giant laughed out loud. That old thing is not wrong this time. I will soon become a divine general. Lan Luofang and the others were all dumbfounded. Was it really okay for this troublemaker to speak nonsense in a serious manner? The celestial race had already been exterminated for tens of thousands of years, and they still wanted to be promoted? It was purely a dream. Yun Chujio waited for the giant's laughter to subside before she asked with a smile, "Divine General, no, Lord Commander, shouldn't you go to the Emperor Shin's pavilion to thank His Majesty for his kindness?" The giant was stunned at first before he nodded. "That's right. I should go and thank His Majesty for his kindness and appreciation of me." After saying that, the giant ignored Yun Chujio and the others and walked forward. Everyone was puzzled. How did little Jiu know about the Divine Emperor Pavilion? Could it be that the old man from the Celestial Master Mansion had said something to her? The giant walked very quickly. Yun Chujio and the others tried their best to keep up with him. Yun Chujio thought that this celestial race was indeed extraordinary. Just the remnant of his soul consciousness was so powerful. What kind of terrifying existence was this when he was alive? However, such a powerful celestial race was exterminated. The mastermind behind this was so terrifying that it was impossible to imagine. She didn't know if there were no wild beasts on the 4th level or if they were afraid of the giant's pressure. In short, they walked unimpeded all the way to the spiral stairs. Yun Chujio thought that the giant would climb up the stairs. However, she realized that the giant did not stop but continued to walk forward. Yun Chujio rolled her eyes and gestured for everyone to continue to follow. Chapter 50-62, Divine Emperor Pavilion. After walking for a while, the giant walked to a pavilion-like place and placed a jade token on it. Yun Chujio and the rest were astonished to discover that the pavilion had turned into a teleportation array formation. Seeing the giant walk in, Yun Chujio gritted her teeth and brought Lan Luofang and the rest in as well. Yun Chujio cursed in her heart. It seemed like the teleportation array formation that Lan Luomu had was not reliable at all. There was a teleportation array formation here, but he had not discovered it. She had originally tricked the giant to pay a visit to Emperor Shin so that he could be used as cannon fodder and pass through a few levels smoothly. However, from the looks of it, they did not need to go through one level after another. This teleportation array most likely led to the 18th level. It was simply wonderful. The giant had a deep attachment to the so-called Divine Commander position. Hence, even when he saw Yun Chujio and the others following him, he turned a blind eye. A moment later, a white light flashed in front of her eyes. An extremely luxurious palace appeared in front of Yun Chujio. The words Divine Emperor Pavilion on the palace emitted a myriad of multicolored lights. Even though she had never seen many things before, it did not mean that she did not know what was good for her. Not to mention other things, just the stone slabs on the ground were enough to make everyone dumbfounded. The stone slabs were made of the same material as the pearls that were full of spiritual energy that they had discovered previously. It was simply too extravagant. Hei Shinjo felt a little itchy in her heart. My goodness, if I were to put all these stone slabs away, wouldn't I make a fortune? Fortunately, this fellow was greedy for money, so he still knew what was important and what was not. When he saw that the giant had already walked forward, he quickly followed. In almost an instant, the originally empty hall was filled with many shining divine weapons. They directly blocked Yun Chujio and the others from entering the hall. Lan Luofang and the others were already trembling. If not for the fact that they still had a shred of rationality and knew that there were no living people here, they would have already knelt on the ground. Yun Chujio's expression was the same as usual. She stood on her tiptoes and looked into the hall, but she couldn't see anything clearly due to the fog. At this moment, a person who looked like an attendant walked out and said arrogantly, "His Majesty has ordered you to enter." Yun Chujio nodded and immediately led Lan Luofang and the others into the Great Hall. Needless to say, the Great Hall was luxurious. What was even more amazing was that everyone's feet were surrounded by clouds and mist, making people feel as if they were floating in the air. An old man wearing a bright yellow dragon robe sat on an extremely luxurious throne in the front. He looked mighty even though he was not angry. Behind him stood several palace maids and attendants. Some of them were holding a palm fan, while others were holding a tray. No one knew what was on the tray. Yun Chujio saw an old man in the middle on the left and could not help but shrink her eyes. It was actually Yan Feng. However, the way Yan Feng looked at her was no different from a stranger. However, what was going on? Just as Yun Chuzhou was sizing him up, a servant shouted sternly, "How dare you? Why aren't you kneeling when you see His Majesty?" Lan Luofang and the others were already trembling. When they heard this, they immediately knelt on the ground, not even daring to raise their heads. They were intimidated by this pressure, and the last bit of clarity in their hearts no longer existed. They only thought that they had really met Emperor Shen. Yun Chuzhou was not affected. She thought for a moment and understood. Everything in front of her was most likely formed from the remnant consciousness of Emperor Shen. This could also explain why Yan Feng did not recognize her. However, this Emperor Shen was not an ordinary person. Even his remnant consciousness was extremely terrifying. He had to think long and hard. Chapter 50-63, Zhang Qiqi had a son. Yun Chuzhou thought that a wise man would not be at a disadvantage in front of him. Therefore, this fellow also knelt down. This fellow comforted himself in his heart. Anyway, the person in front of him was a dead person. He could just sweep his grave. What surprised Yun Chuzhou was that the Emperor Shen said indifferently, "Although the ghost race has submitted to our celestial race, as the ghost ancestor, your status is equivalent to a divine venerate. Get up. Give me a seat." Just as the Emperor Shen said that, a servant moved a chair to the left and placed it on the first seat. Yun Chuzhou did not know what the Emperor Shen was up to, but she still walked to the side of the seat and sat down. She thought of Lan Luofang and the others, but when she looked up, she found that Lan Luofang and the others had disappeared. Yun Chuzhou did not panic. As the saying goes, when the army comes, the general will block it. When the water comes, the soil will cover it. She will counter every move. I believe you have guessed it as well. Right now, I am just a remnant of my divine sense, said Emperor Shen calmly. Yun Chuzhou did not expect Emperor Shen to admit it so easily. For a moment, she did not know how to respond. Hence, she did not say anything. The celestial race was completely annihilated overnight. The supreme city became an empty city overnight. This is all fate. Yun Chuzhou saw that the Emperor Shen's voice contained some desolation, but there was no sadness. She thought to herself that this Emperor Shen's character was quite tenacious. Emperor Shen continued, "Do you know why you were able to be reborn?" Yun Chuzhou shook her head. She naturally did not know. "This is because I used the last remaining divine power to protect your divine soul and sent you to a different world," Emperor Shen said slowly. Yun Chuzhou revealed a shocked and grateful expression, but she did not believe it in her heart. She was not related to this bullshit Emperor Shen, so how could he be so kind? He was lying to a ghost. Emperor Shen glanced at Yun Chuzhou indifferently and said, "You may think that I am lying to you, but do you know that I deliberately sent a woman with the bloodline of the celestial race to a different world with you in order to protect you?" Yun Chuzhou was stunned. What did he mean? Emperor Shen did not continue, as if he was waiting for Yun Chuzhou to take the initiative to ask. Yun Chuzhou thought for a moment and asked, "Who is the woman that your majesty is talking about?" Yun Chuzhou's pupils constricted slightly, and her two hands instantly clenched. She said somewhat obscurely, "The woman that your majesty is talking about is Yun Qi?" "That's right. If not, why do you think Yun Qi would risk her life to protect you?" "This is because I have left a mark in her spiritual sense. Her mission is to protect you," Emperor Shen said in a calm tone. Yun Chuzhou's expression froze. So it was just a mission. Then where is she now? But, is she okay? Regardless of whether it was a mission or a friendship, Qi was her best friend and a friend of life and death. When you were struck by the heavenly lightning, Yun Qi used the power of her bloodline to send you back here. Originally, she should have been teleported to the same place as you. However, due to the limited power of her bloodline, she arrived in the Tian Yuan continent a little later than you. What? Yun Qi is in the Tian Yuan continent? Yun Chuzhou asked in surprise. She once stayed there for a short period of time. Now, she is in the Supreme City. Furthermore, she has given birth to a son, Emperor Shin said. Yun Chujo was even more surprised. Son. Chi-Chi had a son. Wait a minute, if Emperor Shin said that Chi-Chi was in the Supreme City, would she be able to meet Chi-Chi? Chapter 50-64, Where's his father? Yun Chujo felt as if she had forgotten something. However, her heart was filled with the desire to see Yun Chi, so she did not think too much about it. Your Majesty, can you let me see Yun Chi? Yun Chujo pleaded. Of course. As soon as she finished speaking, the Emperor Shin waved his sleeves and a cold and refined woman walked in from outside the hall. Beside the woman was a little boy that looked to be 7 or 8 years old. When Yun Chujo saw the little boy's appearance, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Damn, why did this little boy look so similar to a black chicken's head? When the woman saw Yun Chujo, a hint of excitement appeared on her cold face. However, she still bowed respectfully and said, Yun Chi greets your Majesty. The little boy beside her also bowed respectfully like a little adult. Emperor Shin's expression did not change. Instead, he said, the two of you have met again after such a long time. I believe you have a lot to say. Please leave first. I will summon the both of you in a few days. Yun Chujo had a lot to say to Yun Chi. Hence, she gave a perfunctory bow and dragged Yun Chi out of the main hall. Just as she was about to say something, a palace maid said, Fairies, please follow this servant to the side hall to rest. After arriving at the side hall, Yun Chujo sent the palace maid out and said impatiently, Chi-Chi, is it really you? Yun Chi's cold face showed a helpless expression. What do you think? Yun Chujo chuckled, grabbed Yun Chi's hand, and said, I thought I was dreaming. Yun Chujo had a belly full of words, but all of them turned into silly smiles. She felt that the originally empty part of her heart had been filled with happiness. After giggling foolishly for a long time, the fellow finally looked at the little boy next to him. Although the little boy had a face that looked very similar to Shue Wuji's, his expression was similar to Yun Chi's. It was clear and cold. Yun Chujo was just about to stretch out her demonic claws to pinch the little boy's face, but the little boy immediately dodged to the side. His phoenix-like eyes were filled with some probing and vigilance. Yun Chujo didn't succeed. She asked, Chi-Chi, is this kid your son? Why did you suddenly have such a big son? Where's his father? Yun Chi curled her lips. His father is too useless. He went to fight monsters to level up. Yun Chujo, this guy stared at the little boy's face that resembled Shue Wuji's. Although he felt that it was impossible, he still asked, Chi-Chi, is your man called Shue Wuji? Yun Chujo, this guy felt that his brain was not enough. Although she had once thought of pairing Yun Chi and Shue Wuji together, she felt that this wish was a little ridiculous and impossible to achieve. But now, she was telling her that not only did Shue Wuji and Chi-Chi really become a couple, but their son could also be a bystander. Fuck. Did it have to be so exciting? Yun Chujo was stunned for a while before she asked, Chi-Chi, how did you and Wuji's heads get together? Yun Chi froze when she heard the words Wuji's head. Then, she said faintly, he raped me. Then, I felt that he was pretty good looking and raped him instead. Yun Chujo, what the hell? Black Chicken Head raped 7-7, and then 7 raped him. These two people really knew how to play. This guy instantly thought of her. Damn it, she and the gigolo didn't even get to have sex, but Black Chicken Head and 7-7's son could even play along. It was too embarrassing. Chapter 50-65 gave a big gift to Rue Air. The more Yun Chujo thought about it, the more she felt that she was really stifled. Not to mention her son, she hadn't even gotten a gigolo yet. It was strange. When did Wuji's head hook up with Chi-Chi? She actually didn't notice it at all. That wasn't right. It seemed that once he came to Tianyuan Academy to visit her and stayed in Tianyuan City for a long time. During that period of time, he even asked her how she would react if a woman was raped. Fuck. It turned out that he had raped Chi-Chi at that time. This damned black-headed chicken. No, Chi-Chi said that she had raped black-headed chicken instead. Now that she thought back, black-headed chicken had indeed behaved like a little wife who had been abandoned. This damned black-headed chicken. If she had told her earlier, she would have been able to see Chi-Chi earlier. Chi-Chi, does Wu Ji know that he has a son? Hei Xinjiu thought wickedly. If Shui Wuji did not know, she could have teased him. Yunqi guessed Yun Chujia's thoughts and nodded. Then, she changed the topic. Little Jiu, how have you been these years? Yun Chujiu was stunned. Then, she nodded vigorously. Good, very good. At this point, tears flowed out of her eyes. She then smiled and said, it's even better now. I thought that I would only be able to see you after I became a god. I didn't expect to see you now. Moreover, you and Wu Ji's heads have become a pair. This is really great. Yun Qi's clear and cold eyes were slightly moist. Hello, I'm good. I'm good. Rui Er, come over and greet your little Aunt Jiu. Hearing this, Rui Er bowed respectfully, but he did not walk over. Apparently, he was still guarding against Hei Xinjia's demonic claws. Hei Xinjiu did not mind it. She searched the storage ring, trying to find something good to give to Rui Er as a greeting gift. However, for some reason, she felt that the storage ring was hazy, but she could not find anything. She laughed dryly. There's something wrong with my storage ring. I'll give you a gift when it's back to normal. Don't worry, I'm very generous. Yunqi rolled her eyes and said indifferently, if you're generous, I'm afraid it'll rain red in the sky. Yun Chujiu was slapped and said with her hands on her hips, alright, alright. Then I'll give Rui Er a big gift. If the pretty boy and I give birth to a daughter, how about being Rui Er's wife? However, Yunqi chuckled and said, alright, it's a deal. Rui Er looked at his mother speechlessly. Was it really good to trick his son like this? When Yun Chujiu saw that Yunqi had agreed, she smiled so happily that her eyelashes were about to blossom. She was secretly pleased. This brat Rui Er looked very good. Her daughter had already won at the starting line. She was simply a winner in life. Yun Chujiu and Yunqi seemed to have endless things to talk about. Yun Chujiu wanted to ask Yunqi about her experiences over the years, but a palace maid came over and said that the Emperor Shen wanted to meet the two of them. Yun Chujiu was puzzled. Didn't they say that they would meet again in a few days? It seemed like only half a day had passed. However, this question quickly disappeared, as if she had never had this thought. Yun Chujiu, Yunqi, and Rui Er once again went to the Divine Hall. This time, the Emperor Shen did not give Yun Chujiu a seat. Yun Chujiu, I believe you believe what I said before, right? The Emperor Shen said indifferently. Chapter 5066, Yunqi's blood. Yun Chujiu felt dizzy for a moment. She nodded subconsciously and said, thank you, Your Majesty, for letting me reunite with Chi-Chi. Hearing this, a faint light flashed in Emperor Shen's eyes. He said, you don't have to be so polite. I originally planned to summon you in a few days, but I suddenly remembered something, so I summoned you here. Yunqi frowned and asked, what did Your Majesty think of? Emperor Shen sighed. I suddenly remembered that the Lord also suffered a serious injury that day, so he is still suffering from the cold poison. Now, I have found a way to cure him. Hearing this, Yun Chujiu was immediately delighted. She asked, what is it? Yunqi has the celestial bloodline. You just need to let the Lord consume Yunqi's blood. Don't worry, you don't need too much. Just a small porcelain bottle will do, Emperor Shen said slowly. Yun Chujiu was stunned. Yunqi's blood? Little Jiu, do you want to save him? If you want, I'll give you his blood. It's just a small porcelain bottle anyway. It won't be a problem, Yunqi said. Yun Chujo thought for a moment. It was just a small porcelain bottle anyway, so there was no problem. Therefore, she nodded. Chi, thank you so much. Don't worry, I'll make the gigolo repay you properly. Yun Chi nodded. She immediately cut her index finger and received a porcelain bottle of fresh blood. Yun Chujo was about to put the porcelain bottle into her storage ring when Emperor Shin said, "The divine power in your bloodline is disappearing very quickly. You must immediately feed the blood to the Lord." Hearing this, Yun Chujo immediately reached into her sleeve pocket and pulled out the small silver snake. When Yun Chujo saw that the small silver snake's vertical pupils were tightly shut, she could not help but be shocked. "Prince Charming, what happened to you?" Emperor Shin said with slight anxiety, "The cold poison has acted up again. Quickly feed him the blood so that his injuries do not worsen." Yun Chujo immediately opened the cork of the porcelain bottle. On the throne, Emperor Shin's face was filled with anticipation and anxiety. There was even a hint of complacency. However, he saw Yun Chujo put the stopper back on. "Yun Chujo, why are you not feeding the blood to the Lord?" Emperor Shin urged. Yun Chi, who was at the side, also said, "That's right. Little Jiu, quickly feed the blood to the Lord. Once his body recovers, the two of you will be able to get married and have children." Yun Chujo put the small silver snake back into her sleeve pocket and then fixed her gaze on Yun Chi. Yun Chi was a little scared by her stare. "Little Jiu, what's wrong with you? Don't you want to quickly cure the Lord's cold poison?" Sheng Zun asked. Yun Chujo glanced at her a few more times, then looked at Ruier, who had always been very obedient. Finally, her gaze fell on Emperor Shen. "Where did you take the real Chi and Ruier?" Yun Chujo stared at Emperor Shen and asked coldly. Emperor Shen frowned slightly. "Yun Chujo, what do you mean by this?" Yun Chujo pinched her palm with her fingernails so that she could remain clear-headed. She said coldly, "Yun Chi never talks so much. Moreover, that little brat's gaze isn't right either. The reason why you couldn't wait to call me over is because you want to swap the real Chi and her son, right? Tell me, where are they? Otherwise, I'll kill you." Emperor Shin sneered. Good. As expected of the former ghost ancestor. You're indeed smarter than others. It's just that it's too late for you to understand. The time limit for the teleportation barrier has passed. You and Di Bei Ming can stay in this supreme city forever. Chapter 5067 The illusionary realm of drinking poison to quench thirst. As soon as Emperor Shin's voice fell, his entire person disappeared. An intense pain came from Yun Chuji's Dantian. Her entire person suddenly became clear-headed. Only then did Yun Chujo realize that there was no fake Yun Chi and her mother by her side. Instead, it was the muddle-headed Lan Luoyen and the others. They were still in the Great Hall at this moment. However, the Great Hall was already empty. Yun Chujo was stunned for a moment. The first thing she did was to look at the small silver snake in her sleeve. When she saw that the small silver snake's vertical pupils were closed, her heart tightened. She stretched out her hand to check for breath. When she saw that the breath was still normal, she heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at the porcelain bottle in her hand. She did not open the cork but kept it in her storage ring. After she was freed, she would let Go Weiba analyze the ingredients in the bottle. Perhaps it would be able to solve the mystery of the cold poison in Di Baiming's body. Yun Chujo laughed bitterly. Even though Yen Feng warned her not to trust others, she was still tricked. Chi was a hole in her heart. Even if there was a tiny possibility, she did not want to miss it. It was because her obsession was too strong. Even the pain caused by the black bead did not wake her up. In other words, she was addicted to the illusion of drinking poison to quench her thirst. She was satisfied to be able to see Chi, talk to her, and know if she was doing well. However, the illusion was too real. She couldn't find any flaws in it. What was going on? At the same time, in a bedroom, a cold-looking woman opened her eyes. She was dazed for a moment, then jumped up from the bed and called out in fear, "Ruyer! Ruyer! Mother!" A confused child's voice came from the side room. The woman closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then, she rushed to the next room. On the bed sat a 7 or 8-year-old little boy. The little boy's features were like a painting, especially his phoenix eyes. Even though he was still young, he was still so stunning that people could not take their eyes off him. The woman nervously checked the little boy. When she saw that he was fine, she heaved a sigh of relief. It was rare for the little boy to see a woman so nervous. He then recalled the dream he had just had. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "Mother, I had a dream just now." The woman was startled. "What dream?" "We seem to have arrived at a palace. There's Emperor Shen and many palace maids. Oh right, there's also a, somewhat strange woman. You asked me to call her little ninth aunt." When the woman heard the little boy's description, her expression became more and more solemn. Why did she and Ruyer have the same dream? The little boy omitted the matter of that strange aunt wanting to give her daughter to him as his wife. That aunt was so strange. He did not want that kind of wife. After the little boy finished speaking, he saw the woman's solemn expression and asked somewhat uneasily, "Mother, what's wrong?" The woman was different from ordinary parents. She had always treated the little boy as an equal, so she did not hide anything and said, "Mother, and you had the same dream." The little boy was stunned. "Mother, is there something wrong?" The woman nodded slightly. "No one in the world would have the same dream. Moreover, we had the same dream at the same time." The little boy's exquisite little face turned solemn. "Mother, then do you really know little Aunt Jo? Is there really such a person as little Aunt Jo?" The woman nodded. "Of course. Mother's only relative is your little Aunt Jo." Chapter 5068. Is little Aunt Jo really that smart? A hint of worry appeared in the little boy's phoenix-like eyes. "Mother, since this dream is a little inappropriate, could little Aunt Jo really be trapped in that palace? Will anything happen to little Aunt Jo?" The woman was not surprised by her son's intelligence. After a moment of silence, she said, "Even if your little Aunt Jo is really trapped inside, she will be able to escape safely." The little boy asked in puzzlement, "Why is that?" A smile appeared on the woman's cold face. "Because your little ninth aunt is the smartest person in the world. She will think of a way to resolve it." When the little boy heard this, he did not believe it. That little ninth aunt was strange. Could she really be that smart? The woman seemed to see through the little boy's thoughts and said softly, "Do you think that mother is exaggerating?" The little boy's face flushed red and said uneasily, "Mother, is that little Aunt Jo really that smart?" The woman chuckled and did not say anything, her thoughts drifting away. When little Jo had just been brought back by the people from the organization, she was only 6 years old, 2 or 3 years younger than her companions. In addition, she was a little beggar before, thin and small. Everyone wondered how such a good-for-nothing could be chosen. Naturally, everyone despised and ostracized her. In addition to the fact that it was a hell that ate people without spitting out their bones, everyone thought that she would be the first to die. However, in just a year, Xiaojiu, who was only 7 years old, had become the leader of their group and finally became her partner. Seeing that his mother did not speak, the little boy thought for a moment and asked, "Mother, Aunt Xiaojiu said that she knows father. Is that true?" The girl's thoughts were interrupted by the little boy's words. When she heard him mention Shui Wuji, she could not help but be startled. Then, she said, "If we have the chance to see that unreliable father of yours again, we will ask him and we will know." The little boy's face appeared a little unnatural, but he still asked, "Mother, when will we be able to see father again?" The girl's cold face also revealed a little discomfort. "When your father becomes stronger after killing monsters, we will naturally be able to see him." The little boy was used to his mother's odd words. He mumbled, "Father is so stupid." The woman, Hei Xinjiu, who was missed by the mother and son, sneezed, "Achoo! Is Chi-Chi talking about me? I wonder if what I saw before was real." "Forget it. We'll find out after we go out and ask Wuji's head." Yun Chujo mumbled before splashing water on Lan Luofang and the others to wake them up. Lan Luofang and the others had confused looks on their faces. What happened? Their memories were still stuck at the moment they saw Emperor Shen. After that, everything went blank. Lan Luomu took out a spirit tool that could show the date and time. Then, he widened his eyes in horror. "No, that's impossible. We were only unconscious for a while. How could so many days have passed?" Lan Luofang and the others were immediately shocked when they heard that. They moved closer to Lan Luomu to take a look, and were instantly dumbfounded. "Could it be that there's something wrong with your spirit tool? We clearly only fell asleep for a short while," Lan Luoyen said, unwilling to give up. The others also agreed. If so many days had really passed, then wouldn't they have already missed the teleportation barrier? Wouldn't that mean they would be stuck here forever? No, that was absolutely impossible. There must be something wrong with the spiritual artifact. Chapter 5069, Emperor Shen Yunchujo sighed. The spirit weapon did not make a mistake. We have indeed missed the teleportation barrier. The reason why Yunchujo was so certain was that she had asked the dumb cuties and even asked the black bead for confirmation. The black bead would not be affected by the illusion. If she had not been too obsessed, she would not have been tricked by Emperor Shen. Even though the black bead had warned her, she was still immersed in the illusion of drinking poison to quench her thirst. The black bead was afraid that it would damage her dantian, so she did not dare to go overboard. When everyone heard Yunchuji's words, they immediately sat down on the ground. It was over. They were going to be trapped in this supreme city. Yunchujo thought for a moment. If she wanted to get out, the breakthrough would undoubtedly be on that Emperor Shen. She naturally did not believe what Emperor Shen had said to her in the illusory realm. That old thing obviously did not have any good intentions. She blinked her eyes and shouted with her hands on her waist, "Emperor Shen, come out." A dignified Emperor Shen actually used such a lowly method to trap us. Is this a distortion of divinity or a depravity of morality? Just as Yunchujo finished her sentence, a shadow appeared on the dragon throne. It was the Emperor Shen. "Yunchujo, you brought this upon yourself. If you had fed the medicine to Beiming as I said, you would have already left this place." The Emperor Shen sneered. "To think that you would say such a thing. That is my fiancé. Why would I harm him? I don't understand. You only have a strand of divine sense left. Why would you want to kill him?" Yunchujo asked in confusion. Emperor Shen sighed, "The medicine I gave you was not to kill him, but to strengthen his seal. Once his seal is strengthened, the cold poison will naturally be reduced. Although you and Beiming were lovers in your previous life, there is a deep hatred between you. Once he unseals all the seals, it will be too late for you to regret. I am also helping you. Why don't you pour the medicine down his throat right now and everyone will be happy? Wouldn't that be great?" Yunchujo looked deeply at Emperor Shen. "Your Majesty, Emperor Shen, do you think I am a fool?" Emperor Shen was suddenly angered from embarrassment. "What I am saying to you is all good advice. If you don't listen, I have no other choice. Then you can just die here." Yunchujo laughed crisply. "Your Majesty, Emperor Shen, I originally thought that you are a drifter now. There are some things that are hard to say, but you can't treat me as a fool, right? If you really had good intentions, why didn't you tell me openly? Why did you make me fall into an illusion and make up such a lie? Furthermore, if you were really that smart, your celestial race wouldn't have all died. This supreme city wouldn't have become an empty city." Emperor Shen was so angry that he was trembling. "Good, very good. You are indeed sharp-tongued. Aren't you afraid that I will kill Yunqi and her son?" Yun Chuzhou sneered. If you really had that ability, you would have done it long ago. Why would you need to spend so much effort to set up an illusion array? Although I don't know how you did it, you won't have a second chance. When Yun Chuzhou said this, killing intent suddenly rose. Lan Luofang and the others could not help but tremble. Yun Chuzhou, I can't be bothered to waste my breath on you. No matter how smart you are, no matter how sharp-tongued you are, you can only be trapped here. The moment Emperor Shen's voice fell, the phantom disappeared. Yun Chuzhou did not obtain much useful information from this conversation. Hence, she said, Emperor Shen, why are you in such a hurry to run? Come out, I have something to ask you. Chapter 50-70, You are really naive. Yun Chuzhou shouted a few times, but Emperor Shen did not come out again. Yun Chuzhou rolled her eyes and shouted, Emperor Shen, I think what you said makes sense. As long as I pour the medicine into the pretty boy, you will send us out. You are not lying to us. Of course it's true. Jun Wu is not joking. Emperor Shen's figure appeared again. How do I know that you're not lying to me? The teleportation barrier has already been closed. How can you send us out? Yun Chuzhou asked suspiciously. I naturally have my ways. You just need to do as I say. Emperor Shen said somewhat impatiently. Yun Chuzhou's eyes flashed and she said with her hands on her hips, all right, if you don't keep your word, then you're just an old bastard. Emperor Shen gritted his teeth, but he endured it and did not say a word. Yun Chuzhou took out a porcelain bottle from her storage ring and a small silver snake from her sleeve pocket. Just as she was about to pour the medicine into the porcelain bottle, Emperor Shen suddenly said, wait, throw the porcelain bottle on the ground and drink this bottle of medicine. Yun Chuzhou curled her lips. It's really troublesome. Even though she said that, she still threw the porcelain bottle aside and picked up the porcelain bottle that Emperor Shen threw over. Sigh. Pretty boy, there's nothing I can do. As the saying goes, husband and wife are birds in the same forest. When disaster strikes, they fly separately. I can't do anything about it. Don't blame me. Pretty boy, I was forced to do this. Don't blame me. Pretty boy, don't worry. Even if you become a fool after drinking the medicine, I will take care of you for the rest of your life. There was a hint of mockery in Emperor Shen's eyes. Everyone was selfish. Didn't Yun Chuzhou say so much just to find an excuse for herself? Finally, Yun Chuzhou stopped blabbering. She opened the bottle's stopper and poured the medicine into the small silver snake's mouth. Yun Chuzhou put the small silver snake back into her sleeve pocket and said, Can you let us out now? Emperor Shen laughed out loud, Yun Chuzhou, you are really smart and muddle-headed. Do you think I will let you go? Yun Chuzhou took 2 steps back in disbelief. You lied to me? Emperor Shen laughed for a while more before saying, Yun Chuzhou, you are really naive. Yun Chuzhou was so angry that she was twitching. You, the dignified Emperor Shen, actually did not keep your word. Do you still have any face? Also, what kind of medicine did you ask me to give the gigolo? Naturally, it's a medicine that will take his life. As long as he dies, our celestial race will be resurrected, and our celestial race will return to its former glory. Emperor Shen said somewhat crazily. Yun Chuzhou's heart shook. What did he mean? What did he mean by the death of the gigolo and the celestial race will be resurrected? She did not have the time to think about it. The most important thing now was to deal with this cunning and ruthless Emperor Shen. She looked as if she had suffered a huge blow as she shouted, You're shameless. Too shameless. As the Emperor Shen, you actually lied to me. Actually, you have no way to send us out, right? What about those people who came in with us? Were they also killed by you? Emperor Shen seemed to enjoy seeing Yun Chuzhou's defeated look. He said proudly, Those people have already used the teleportation barrier to leave. You probably don't know about it, right? The teleportation array was set up on the 4th level, inside the Zhenwei Divine General's residence. I used a little trick to trick all of you to come here. If not, do you think that the fourth level will have an array that leads directly to the Divine Emperor Pavilion? Ha! You have always claimed to be smart, but in reality, you are only a so-so. Chapter 5071 Dream Entry Technique. When Yunchujo heard this, she looked as though she had suffered a huge blow. She was somewhat vexed. That's right, she had been careless. She did not even think about it. That Jinwei Divine General's rank was not high. How could he have a token that could lead straight to the Divine Emperor Pavilion? However, she had placed too much trust in the spirit weapon in Lan Luma's hands. It must have been done by the Emperor Shen that caused the spirit weapon to malfunction. When the Emperor Shen saw Yunchuji's dejected look, he felt very relieved. He continued, if you had not arrived here, I would not have been able to make Di Baiming fall into a deep sleep. Therefore, all of this was caused by your stupidity. The rumors that the ghost ancestor's wisdom is stronger than the gods were just rumors. Yunchujo smiled bitterly, I was indeed too stupid. I admit defeat. However, why did you let those people out? Wouldn't it be better to just trap them here? Emperor Shen snorted coldly, letting them out will make the people outside lower their guard and think that there is nothing unusual about this supreme city. To avoid attracting unnecessary trouble. After all, it was not easy for me to get this opportunity, so I naturally have to be careful. Yunchujo nodded, Emperor Shen is indeed Emperor Shen. He is actually so meticulous. However, you probably have no way to teleport us out, right? After all, if you had such a method, you wouldn't be trapped here forever. Of course, I have a way to teleport all of you out. Right now, I am only a wisp of spiritual sense. If I leave this place, it will completely dissipate, so I don't dare to leave this place. However, I can be revived very soon. This 3,000 large and small continents will be mine again. Ha ha ha. Emperor Shen laughed crazily. I don't believe it. If you really have a way to teleport us out, why does Supreme City only open once every 30 years? You must be exaggerating. In reality, you don't have much divine power left. Yunchujo shook her head and said. That's right. In order to design all of this, I have exhausted all of my divine power. However, this supreme city has a teleportation array that leads to the outside world. As long as it is activated, I will naturally be able to do it. However, I have no intention of letting you guys go, so you can give up on this idea. However, don't worry, I will not kill you. After my divine power recovers, I will use my divine power to unlock your seal and then read your memories. After all, everyone knows that the ghost ancestor is rich. The treasures that you have hidden are all mine. Ha ha ha. Yunchujo was so angry that her face turned red. You are shameless. You are shameless. I know now. That teleportation array was prepared for you to use after your resurrection. Am I right? Emperor Shen snorted coldly. You are finally smart. That's right. After my resurrection, I do not have the patience to wait for 30 years. I can directly exit that teleportation array. Yunchujo asked in puzzlement, Emperor Shen, I heard that the celestial race can tear through the void. Since that's the case, why do you still want to set up a teleportation array here? Emperor Shen snorted coldly. There are countless things that people spread rumors about. Although our celestial race can tear through the void, there are many restrictions. Furthermore, the location of this supreme city is quite special. In addition, after I resurrect, my divine power will definitely be very weak. Naturally, it will be difficult for me to use the void technique. Then what about the 77th mother and son that I saw when I fell into the illusion? Yunchujo asked. Emperor Shen was now very pleased with himself, but he still had a little bit of pride in him. He said, this is the dreamland art. Although it has consumed a lot of my divine power, no matter what, it is still worth it to trap you here. Chapter 5072, just wait for your resurrection. Yun Chujo was delighted when she heard Emperor Shen's words. In that case, the Chi-Chi and Rui air that she had seen were both real. That was great. As long as Chi-Chi and she were on the same plane, she would definitely have a way to find Chi-Chi. It had to be said that this idiot Shui Wuji was really blessed. He had actually flirted with Chi-Chi and even had an elder son. Yun Chujo suppressed the joy in her heart and continued to deal with Emperor Shen. So it's the dream entering technique. The celestial race really lives up to its reputation. Emperor Shen said proudly, of course. When the celestial race was at its peak, there was no force in this world that could contend with our celestial race. If it wasn't for the fact that I only had a remnant of my spiritual sense, it wouldn't have been difficult to capture that mother and son to Supreme City. Oh. Why have I heard that the demon race isn't weak? Yun Chujo said indifferently. Demon race? They are just a bunch of crooks. How can they be compared to my celestial race? Emperor Shen said disdainfully. Yun Chujo did not argue with him. Instead, she changed the topic. I was indeed one step behind this time. It was just my carelessness. Let me guess where the teleportation array will be set up. I feel that there is a high chance that it will be in the Divine Emperor Pavilion. Furthermore, it will be in this great hall. Am I right? When Yun Chujo said this, she stared intently into Emperor Shen's eyes, not missing a single change. When she saw Emperor Shen's pupils suddenly constrict, she had a guess in her heart. It seemed that she was right. Emperor Shen snorted coldly, you want to find out the location of the teleportation array? Dream on. Yun Chujo could not be bothered to put on an act anymore. She sneered, Emperor Shen, it doesn't matter if you don't say it. I'll find it myself. I don't believe that I can't find it. Emperor Shen said coldly, I can be resurrected immediately. Do you think you still have a chance to find the teleportation array? Yun Chujo shrugged her shoulders, old bastard, then just wait for your resurrection. What do you mean? Emperor Shen had an ominous premonition in his heart. Isn't the literal meaning that you're smart? Slowly understand it yourself. Yun Chujo said indifferently. The ominous premonition in Emperor Shen's heart was even greater. He asked in a slightly flustered manner, You didn't feed the poison to Di Baiming? No. Impossible. I personally saw you feed the medicinal liquid in the porcelain bottle to him. Yun Chujo completely ignored him. Instead, she sized up the Grand Hall's layout. The Grand Hall's layout was very luxurious. However, where was the teleportation array hidden? Yun Chujo said to Lan Luofeng and the others, that old bastard's divine power has almost been used up. There's no need to be afraid of him. Everyone, look for it. This teleportation array is definitely in this Grand Hall. Lan Luofeng and the others were already dumbfounded. They felt that their brains were no longer sufficient. What ghost ancestor, Di Baiming, the celestial race, Chi-Chi, what kind of nonsense was this? Lan Luofeng asked weakly, Little Jiu, will that Emperor Shen really not do anything to us? Don't worry. I didn't see his figure getting fainter and fainter. If he still had the ability, he would have long subdued us. He's just a paper tiger, Yun Chujo said disdainfully. The reason why she had been dealing with him for so long was firstly to get information from him. Secondly, she wanted to confirm her judgment. From the looks of it, he was already at the end of his rope and had no other means. Seeing that he had no signs of revival, Emperor Shen then heard Yun Chujo's words and shouted in panic, Yun Chujo, are you lying to me? How did you do it? Yun Chujo curled the corner of her lips. Guess. Chapter 5073, Are you really that stupid? Emperor Shen was so angry that he nearly vomited blood. If he could guess it, why would he ask her? Yun Chujo ignored him and treated him as a decoration. Emperor Shen was so angry that he could not care about his dignity anymore. He was unwilling to accept this. He had used almost all of his remaining divine power to set up such a trap. In the end, he did not even know how he failed. One could imagine how aggrieved he was. Yun Chujo, tell me, what did you do? I watched you pour poison into Di Baiming, but why is he still alive? Yun Chujo originally did not want to bother with him, but she recalled that Di Baiming had once told her that he would not die. Then, the question was, why was the Emperor Shen so sure that the gigolo would die if he drank the poison? Could it be that someone had misled him? Yun Chujo thought of this and sighed, Emperor Shen, I did feed him the poison you gave me, but I don't know why he did not die. I feel that there is something wrong with your poison. After all, the gigolo is the reincarnation of Xingzun. Normal poison would not be able to kill him. The Emperor Shen was stunned before he shook his head, impossible. As long as he drinks the poison, he will die. I can be revived. The celestial race can prosper. Why are you so sure? Where did that poison come from? Yun Chujo asked. Emperor Shen was in a daze. Where did the poison come from? That's right, how did I get this medicine? Emperor Shen suddenly covered his head and said repeatedly, as long as he drinks that poison, he will die. I will be able to revive. The celestial race will prosper. As long as he drinks the poison, he will die. I will be able to revive. The celestial race will prosper. Yun Chujo was speechless. Was this Emperor Shen crazy? Her expression suddenly turned cold. She remembered that Yan Feng and the others had left a mark on their spiritual senses. This Emperor Shen was probably the same. Could it be that this was a trap? In fact, Emperor Shen was just someone's chess piece. Yun Chujia's first thought was the Divine Devil Hall. Who was the master of this Divine Devil Hall? To think that even Emperor Shen could be toyed with. Fortunately, the porcelain bottle that Emperor Shen had given her looked almost the same as the ancient green jade bottle in her storage ring. Only then did she take the opportunity to switch the porcelain bottle. As she was holding the porcelain bottle with her hand and using her sleeve to cover it, Emperor Shen did not see any flaws. Yun Chujo did not have the time to think about it. It was better to find the exit first. Otherwise, the person behind it might have other tricks up his sleeve. At this moment, Lan Luofang and the rest had already rummaged through the hall for a while, but they did not find anything. Yun Chujia's gaze landed on the dragon throne where Emperor Shen was sitting. Hence, she walked towards Emperor Shen. When Emperor Shen saw Yun Chujio walking over, his scattered gaze turned fierce. It's all because of you. If it wasn't for you, I would have been able to revive and the celestial race would have prospered. I want to kill you. Yun Chujio sneered. Emperor Shen, don't you understand that you have been used by others? You are truly pathetic. Not only did you destroy the celestial race, you even ended up becoming a pawn of your enemy. You are spouting nonsense. I don't understand what you are saying. You deserve to die. Emperor Shen said with a ferocious expression. I am spouting nonsense. Don't you think about it? You have been dead for tens of thousands of years. Why do you only have such a thought now? Let's not talk about other things. Where did the poison come from? Who told you about Chi-Chi? No matter what, the celestial race was once an expert in this world and had supreme glory. As the Emperor Shen, are you really so stupid? Chapter 5074 The Ghost Ancestor was indeed the Ghost Ancestor. Under the intense gaze of Yun Chujio, the Emperor Shen could not help but be stunned when he heard what she said. Even if he was just a wisp of divine sense, even if there was something wrong with his divine sense, as the former Emperor Shen, he knew that what Yun Chujio said was the truth. He had been used by someone. What was laughable was that he was muddle-headed and did not know who had used him. It was as though the thought of killing Di Baiming will bring him back to life, and the celestial race will prosper, came naturally. The poison also appeared out of thin air. When Yun Chujio saw that he had regained his calmness, she said, Emperor Shen, you should know that even if you kill Di Baiming, you will not come back to life. The celestial race will not return to their former prosperity. All of this is just a scam. Furthermore, if I'm not wrong, the stray beasts on the streets and floating layers should be formed from the remnant consciousness of the Celestials. The Celestials of the past have turned into ugly and ferocious stray beasts. It's really a pity. Therefore, even if the so-called resurrection is true, those Celestials who are resurrected will not be the Celestials but a bunch of monsters. Since there was still a remnant of the divine consciousness left behind by Emperor Shen, the other Celestials should also have a remnant of the divine consciousness. However, other than Yan Feng, Yun Chujiu did not meet any of them. Furthermore, there were no corpses after the beasts died. Only the Wanzhu, which could calm the mind, was left behind. That was why there was such a guess. Confusion, shock, and anger flashed across Emperor Shen's face one after another. His figure became even fainter as he said sorrowfully, I, Qiong Huang, am an honorable Emperor Shen. Not only was the celestial race exterminated by my hands, but I was even toyed with by others in the end. I have let down the ancestors of the celestial race. I deserve to die. Yun Chujiu thought to herself, deserve to die. You cannot be any more dead, all right? After a long while, Emperor Shen said, the ghost ancestor is indeed the ghost ancestor. I admit defeat. He Xinjiu sighed. What do you mean, we are not at a disadvantage? We have all been played by others. It's only a matter of time. The Emperor Shen said with a bitter smile, no. Although we were fooled as well, at least you were able to wake up in time. I, on the other hand, refuse to do so. The Emperor Shen paused for a moment before he said, my spiritual perception has been tampered with. There are many things that I cannot say even if I have thoughts in my heart. However, there is one thing that you should know. The person behind the scenes wants Di Baiming dead. Yun Chujiu nodded. This point was right. The poor gigolo was being chased by people all day long. Furthermore, he had to endure the pain of the cold poison. She did not know which bastard wanted to kill him. When Emperor Shen saw Yun Chujiu nod, he continued, the person behind the scenes clearly has terrifying strength. Even someone as strong as my celestial race has suffered the calamity of extermination. Yun Chujiu gritted her teeth and said, you know about the Divine Devil Hall, right? I think that the person behind this should be that dog-shit master of the Divine Devil Hall. It's just that I haven't been able to find his lair. Otherwise, I would have to think of a way to kill him. The Emperor Shen seemed to want to say something, but because his divine sense had been imprinted, he could not say anything. After all, the Emperor Shen was the Emperor Shen. Even though he was only a remnant of his consciousness, he still thought of a way to bypass the divine sense imprint. Hence, he said, your seal hasn't been unsealed, and the world doesn't know about some things. I'll tell you some things that I know. I believe that with your intelligence, you'll definitely gain something in the future. Although the era we're in is called the Ancient Era, it's actually the last generation of the Ancient Era. Chapter 5075 was getting more and more interesting. Yun Chujiu's eyes flashed. Meng Yanshou had previously told her about the first generation of the Ancient Era, the middle generation of the Ancient Era, and the last generation of the Ancient Era. However, its knowledge was limited and its words were very vague. Could it be that there was some big secret behind this? Emperor Shen continued, when the Han Dun was first created, there was only one continent in this world. It was called the Great Wilderness. At that time, there were no races like gods and demons. There were only some mysterious species that had gone extinct. As it was a long time ago, no one knew what exactly existed at that time. At this moment, Emperor Shen's figure became fainter. Hence, he heaved a sigh of relief before continuing, after the Great Wilderness, an unknown change happened. The continent was split into two. This was the Mesozoic era. Tens of thousands of years later, the two continents suddenly began to break apart, turning into several continents with different levels of spiritual power. This is the last generation. Then came the war between the gods and demons. After the celestial race and the demon race demarcated their territories, they lived peacefully for tens of thousands of years. Then, the celestial race, was destroyed. At this point, Emperor Shen's expression became extremely pained. He wanted to say something, but because of the mark in his spiritual sense, he didn't say anything in the end. Seeing this, Yun Chuzhou hurriedly asked, I roughly know what happened after that. There's no need for you to say anything else. Is this what you want to tell me? Emperor Shen slowly said, in the various records, there's nothing about the ancient and Mesozoic era. In fact, our celestial race has a small amount of records regarding this. Yun Chujia's eyes widened. She had a vague feeling that she was about to discover a huge secret. Emperor Shen was about to say something when he let out a miserable cry. It turned out that although he had thought of a way to bypass the spiritual perception mark, he had still triggered the spiritual perception mark. He said with difficulty, I have triggered the spiritual perception mark. It will disappear completely soon. The teleportation array is under the dragon throne. You only need to put in the God Spirit Pearl to activate it. In addition, I have another request. Yun Shi, before Emperor Shen could speak, his figure completely disappeared and turned into nothingness. Yun Chuzhou was speechless. This half-sentence was the most deceitful. What exactly did he want to say about Yun Qi? At this moment, the palace trembled violently, and everyone couldn't help but panic. Yun Chuzhou didn't dare to be negligent. She quickly ordered everyone to move the dragon chair away. As expected, an arrayed disc was found under the dragon chair. However, what the hell was the god's spiritual pearl? Lan Luofang said, Little Jiu, didn't we find 2 beads in the ruins of the stairs? That should be the god's spiritual pearl. Yun Chuzhou laughed bitterly. Her mind was in a mess now. She was really smart for a moment, but she actually forgot about this. Yun Chuzhou immediately took out one of the beads and placed it in the array plate. Immediately, a barrier with spirit energy ripples appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was overjoyed and quickly walked in. A blinding light flashed, and Yun Chuzhou and the others disappeared from where they were. After Yun Chuzhou and the others disappeared, a miniature Gowei Batsao jumped out from a corner. Gowei Bakao's color was already very dim. When it entered the palace, it was originally on Yun Chujia's hair. However, when the Emperor Shen used the Dreamland technique, the Gowei Batsao was sent flying by the Emperor Shen's divine power. After all, this fellow was only a small treasury of Guai Chao. Therefore, he did not dare to overestimate himself by jumping forward. He only hid in a corner and watched. As time passed, it had almost dissipated. Therefore, it did not move closer to Yun Chuzhou to avoid being discovered. It recalled what the Emperor Shen had said. The leaves trembled. Things were getting more and more interesting. Chapter 5076, Our Lan family is number 1. Yun Chuzhou knew nothing about Gowei Bakao's secret stash. At this moment, she, Lan Luofang, and the others had already been teleported outside. They had thought that 10 days had passed since the end of the trial and that the people from the 4 great families had already left. They had not expected that everyone was still here. When the people from the 4 great clans saw Yun Chuzhou and the others who had suddenly appeared, their faces were filled with astonishment. Weren't these people already dead? Why had they suddenly appeared? Moreover, the divine relic trial had already ended and the barrier had long been closed. How did they get out? Lan Dimeo was extremely happy. He had thought that the entire Lan family had been wiped out this time. He had not expected that they would all come out alive. This was great. A hint of joy appeared on old Tua's cold and hard face. He knew that the troublemaker would not die so easily. Lan Luohan and Lan Luoshan had a complicated look on their faces. There was panic, fear, and a hint of disbelief. Although Lan Dimeo was very curious, he was not stupid. Naturally, he would not ask anything in front of everyone. He only asked a few perfunctory questions. Great uncle, I remember that the 4 families need to have a competition, right? I wonder where our Lan family is ranked this time. Yun Chuzhou blinked her eyes and asked. Lan Dimeo looked a little dejected. Each of the three families got 4 pearls of delusion, while Luo Han and Luo Shan only got 1 pearl of delusion. However, this is not a big deal. As long as you guys come out safely. Other than slaughtering some wild beasts on the flat streets, Mu Zian and the others relied on sacrificing the lives of their companions to advance in the levitation layer. Therefore, there were not many wild pearls. Aya, what a coincidence. I still have 4 wild pearls here. Doesn't that mean that our Lan family is number 1? Hei Xinzhou took out 4 wild pearls with a smile. Lan Dimeo was both surprised and happy. He had been ridiculed by the other 3 families many times in the past few days. Now, he could finally be proud. The people from the other 3 families were shocked when they saw this. Qi Tianhui snorted and said, Yun Chuzhou, 2 of the pearls were killed by the 4 families together. They are not yours. Yun Chuzhou shrugged. According to you, Lan Luoshan and Lan Luohan are also part of your pearls. Why didn't you share them with the Lan family? You're not strong enough yet, you're still acting shamelessly. Do you still have any shame? Qi Tianhui was so humiliated that he turned into anger. Bitch! You're courting death. TSK, you're so unreasonable that you scold people. Is that all you've got? I won't lower myself to your level. Anyway, the first place goes to our Lan family. It's useless even if you scold Patian, Yun Chuzhou said with a smile. This guy did not forget the blue ancestor's words, she not only to Lan Luofang and others out safely, but also to get the first place in order to complete the mission. Qi Anqing saw that Qi Tianhui was annoyed by Yun Chuzhou, and his face instantly darkened. Just as he was about to make a move, Zhuang Ruhai, who was at the side, lowered his voice and said, Brother Qi, the ranking of the Divine Relic trial does not involve the division of interests. It is just a matter of ranking. Let him be. Qi Ancheng's face was vicious. Brother Zhuang, we have 3 times more people than them. Why don't we just kill them? Zhuang Ruhai shook his head. That hunchback's strength is unfathomable. Do not act rashly. There is still time in the future. Sooner or later, the Lan family will belong to us. Qi Anqing snorted unwillingly. Forget it. Let them play around for a few days. I don't know when this damn Earth Dragon reversal will end. I have really stayed in this damn place enough. Chapter 5077 was too embarrassing. The reason why the members of the 4 great families had been staying here was because the Earth Dragons were frequently turning over in the Bailuo mountain range hundreds of miles away from Baili. The Bailuo mountain range was the place they had to pass before they could leave. In addition, it was forbidden to fly there, so they could only wait for the Earth Dragons to turn over and calm down before they could leave. Yun Chuzhou also learned about this matter from Lan Dimeo. She didn't care about it. It was the same no matter where they were. Lan Luoyen saw Lan Luoshan and Lan Luohan gnashing their teeth in anger. She wished she could go up and strangle them. However, she was now habitually obedient to Yun Chuzhou's words. Seeing that Yun Chuzhou didn't say anything, she didn't dare to say anything. Yun Chuzhou was looking for an opportunity to say something to Lan Luoyen and the others when she felt the small silver snake in her sleeve wake up. She was overjoyed and couldn't wait to check on the little silver snake's condition. Thus, she glanced at Lan Luofang and the others, warning them not to act rashly. Then, she ran behind a small mound in the distance. To be safe, she opened the isolation array and took out the little silver snake from her sleeve. Although the small silver snake had woken up, it did not seem to be in a good condition. Yun Chuzhou asked worriedly, Prince Charming, are you all right? Why did you faint previously? It doesn't matter. Tell me what exactly happened. The small silver snake said. Yun Chuzhou told her everything and then said, that old thing, Emperor Shen, said half a sentence. I don't know what secret the ancient Mesozoic era has. I always feel that it's a huge secret. Also, what does the matter he begged me have to do with Yun Qi? As the small silver snake had lost its memory, it did not know much about Yun Qi, so it asked about Yun Qi. Yun Chuzhou could only recount the events of her previous life, and then she said that Yen Feng said that I'm an extraterrestrial soul, so it makes some sense. However, wasn't I the ghost ancestor in my previous life? This can't be considered an extraterrestrial soul, right? The small silver snake did not understand Yen Feng's intention for a moment. Perhaps it was an oversight. Just as he was thinking, Yun Chuzhou slapped her thigh. Oh right, I have to send a sound transmission talisman to Wu Jis head first to ask him about Qi Qi. This Wu Jis head is really powerful. He actually hid it from me for such a long time. The small silver snake stopped her. It's not too late to ask when we meet. Besides, how are you going to explain the matter between you and Yun Qi? Yun Chuzhou was stunned. This matter was really a little complicated. She could not explain it clearly in just a few sentences. Forget it. In any case, this matter was most likely true, so it would not take too long. Therefore, she gave up the idea of sending a voice transmission talisman to Shui Wuji. This fellow sighed. Even the head of the black chicken and the son of Qi Qi can be a bystander. How are we doing? We didn't even get out of bed. It's too embarrassing. Due to his amnesia, he didn't know that Yun Chuzhou didn't come to Kueishui because of Guai Chao. He was puzzled. Was he an idiot before he lost his memory? Why didn't he have sex with the ugly girl? Cough, cough. He didn't want to have sex with the ugly girl. He was just curious. Yes, that was it. Yun Chuzhou saw the small silver snake turn a faint pink. She asked fiercely, "What unhealthy thing are you thinking about? You pervert." The small silver snake, she was the one who brought up the idea of having sex first, all right? Why was it his fault? Chapter 5078, Meng Yanshou He Xinzhou suddenly remembered that she was the one who brought up the matter first. Therefore, Wan Yan's thick-skinned face felt a little hot. The guy stuffed the silver snake into his sleeve and grumbled, "I'm too lazy to talk to a pervert like you." The silver snake gritted its teeth secretly. He would deal with this ugly girl after his body recovered. When the time came, he would definitely let her know what a husband's class was. Yun Chuzhou put away the isolation disc and waved at Lan Luofang and the others. Lan Luofang and the others had been staring at her. When they saw her waving, they quickly ran over. When she saw Yun Chuzhou open the isolation disc, Lan Luoyan gritted her teeth and said, "Captain, why did you stop me from getting even with those two bastards?" Yun Chuzhou smiled lightly and said, "Do you think that if you say it, the third elder will believe your words or Lan Luoshan and Lan Luohan's words?" Lan Luoyan was stunned. Lan Luohan was Lan Dimeo's favorite junior. In addition, she was a member of the big branch, so Lan Dimeo would naturally not speak to her. Then, are we just going to let this matter go? Are we letting the two of them off? Lan Luoyan said unwillingly. Yun Chuzhou narrowed her eyes and said, "It's not that simple. Think about it. The Mu family can't wait to kill the Lan family. Why did Lan Luohan and Lan Luohan come out safely?" Lan Luma's mind was more flexible than the others. He said uncertainly, "You mean, the two of them are in collusion with the other three families? Could it be that third elder has a different intention?" Yun Chuzhou shook her head. "Third elder is not that muddle-headed. I think this has something to do with Zhuangshi's family. Don't alert the enemy first. When you go back, start the investigation. Remember this sentence, cut the weeds and get rid of the roots. Otherwise, you will only alert the enemy." Lan Luomu and the others nodded. After this experience, their disdain and contempt for Yun Chuzhou had been replaced by reverence. They believed her words without a doubt. Yun Chuzhou took out a porcelain bottle. "Didn't you take the poison pill of Elder Tuo? This is the antidote. Take it." Everyone believed her words and immediately swallowed it. Then, they fainted. Yun Chujo released the Meng Yanshou and asked it to erase everything that happened after they reached the 4th level of the levitation layer. She changed it to say that they had accidentally found a teleportation array on the 4th level of the levitation layer and were able to escape. A moment later, the Meng Yanshou said weakly, "This time, I used too much of my spiritual power. I need to take a good rest. Well, if you have time, buy me some new storybooks. I'm tired of the old ones." The corner of Yun Chujia's eyes twitched. She agreed and put Meng Yanshou into her spiritual beast bag. After a while, Lan Luomu and the others woke up one after another. Yun Chujo explained that the reason they fainted was because of the effect of the antidote. No one doubted it. After returning to the base, Lan Dimeo found an opportunity to ask them about what happened, and Yun Chujo told them about the modified version. Lan Dimeo saw that they said the same thing, so he didn't ask any more questions. It was good that they could come back safely. Yun Chujo met Elder Tua alone again and asked with a smile, "Elder Tua, did Lan Luoshan and Lan Luohan ask you for the antidote?" Elder Tua nodded, "I did as you said and gave them 2 pills as the antidote. They believed me." Previously, when Yun Chujo told Elder Tua about this, Elder Tua was not going to pay attention to her. But this guy used a piece of jade glass Bodhi leaf as a reward, so Elder Tua agreed. Chapter 5079 You are actually very good. Before Yun Chujo entered the land of God relics, she had already told Elder Tua everything that might have happened. Therefore, when Lan Luoshan and Lan Luohan went to ask Elder Tua for the antidote, he had casually given them 2 pills to fool them. Yun Chujo told Elder Tua about her guess. After all, she was alone now, so there was no way for her to find out about Zhuang Shi's maiden family. Elder Tua's expression changed when he heard this. If this was true, then they had to get rid of the root of the problem as soon as possible. Unfortunately, due to the Earth Dragon's reversal, the voice transmission talisman could not be sent successfully. Otherwise, we could have asked the Patriarch to investigate thoroughly, Elder Tua sighed. Yun Chujo was stunned. It seemed that even if she wanted to ask Xue Wuji about Qi Qi now, there was no way for her to ask. Elder Tua thought that she was worried about Zhuang Shi when he saw that she was stunned. He said, "I can't stir up any trouble for the time being. You don't have to worry." He Xinjiu saw that Elder Tua had misunderstood and immediately put on a sympathetic look. "As a member of the Lan family, I naturally have to do my best to plan for the Lan family. I can't let my guard down even if it's just a tiny bit of trouble." Elder Tua could not help but nod. Although the troublemaker was usually unfocused, he was still quite reliable at critical moments. After gaining a favorable impression, He Xinjiu asked, "Elder Tua, can't we go around somewhere else? Do we have to stay here until the Earth Dragon turns over?" Elder Tua took out a map from his storage ring and showed it to Yun Chujo. The Biluo mountain range is thousands of kilometers long. It's the only way back. If you want to go around it, not only will it take more time, but you'll also have to go through the 10,000-year-old swamp and the blood-cursed miasma forest. It's almost certain that you'll die, so you can only wait for the Earth Dragon to turn over. Yun Chujo nodded. Although cultivators were much stronger than ordinary people, they were most afraid of the swamp. In the swamp, even special ships would sometimes fall into the swamp, so they tried their best to avoid the swamp. Since they could only wait, they could only wait. However, half a month passed after that. He Xinjiu and Di Baiming mumbled, "Prince Charming, why do I feel that there will be natural disasters wherever I go? For example, the sandstorm of death in the ghost city of Tao Tai, the tide on the Flying Flower Island, and the Earth Dragon's reversal this time. Is this damn god deliberately going against me?" Seeing that Di Baiming did not say anything, Yun Chujo finally realized that this was an amnesiac snake. This guy could only tell her about the death sandstorm and the tens of thousands of feet tide inside. "You said that it was a coincidence once or twice, but it's always the same. Then there's a problem. Am I really so unpopular with God?" Seeing her like this, a certain honored warrior comforted her, "You're thinking too much. It might not be the case. Besides, you can always turn the situation around. This time, you can definitely do it too. I believe in you. Yun Chujo said with tears in her eyes, do you really believe in me? I feel that I'm useless and useless. I can't do anything and I can't eat enough. My existence is just a joke. Seeing her like this, Di Biming felt his heart ache. He hurriedly said, don't belittle yourself. Other things aside, if it wasn't for you, the Lan family would have already died in Supreme City. Furthermore, the fact that you were able to resolve Emperor Shin's scheme is enough to prove your intelligence. Therefore, you are actually very, very good. Yun Chujo raised her head in surprise, is what you said true? Do you really think that I am very good? Yes, of course it's true. Di Biming said with certainty. Chapter 50-80, Hell on Earth. Yun Chujo pursed her lips. You're lying. If you really think so, why did you call me ugly girl? I'm just, forget it. I won't call you ugly girl anymore. You're actually, quite good looking, a certain someone said uncomfortably. That's right, I also think I'm quite good looking. You're finally not blind. Yun Chujo said with a smile. A certain someone, he looked at Hei Shinjo who was smiling with a smug look and gritted his teeth in anger. He had been fooled by this ugly girl again. Hei Shinjo looked at the silver snake's vertical pupils that were filled with anger, and her smile became even happier. I told you to lose your memory. I told you to get the hell out of here. I even told you to return the money and interest. You wife-slave, do you still want to overturn the heavens? Dream on. However, she really felt that God was deliberately going against her. Otherwise, why did she always run into natural disasters that happened once every 100 years or even thousands of years? How could there be such a coincidence? Just as she was thinking about it, chaos broke out in the distance. Not good. The Earth Dragon has turned over. Run. Quickly summon the Flying Spirit tool. What's going on? Why can't the flying spiritual weapon fly? The ground began to tremble. The earth chi in some of the cracks in the distance soared into the sky. Some of the people who were slower instantly turned into a bloody mist. Yun Chujo was shocked. She quickly put the small silver snake into her sleeve pocket and chased after them. Everyone looked panicked. Under such a natural disaster, anyone's strength was extremely small, and their lives were extremely fragile. They could only run and run for their lives. Behind them, cracks appeared one after another. Those who ran slower were instantly swallowed by the earth chi. This place was already a hell on earth. Everyone ran toward the east. They thought that after running for a distance, they could use a flying spirit tool to escape. Who knew that not only could they not use a flying spirit tool, but the earth cracks were getting more and more serious. Everyone ran non-stop for a day and a night. In front of them was a dense forest that was as red as blood. Fortunately, at this time, the speed of the earth fissure behind them began to slow down, giving everyone a moment to catch their breath. Regardless of whether it was the elders of the four great aristocratic families or the juniors like Lan Luofang, they all sat on the ground, panting heavily. It was too terrifying. They had never seen such a scene before. They had never been so close to death. Lan Luofang cried, "Little Jiu, we are really going to die this time." Sob, I don't want to die yet. I miss my mother. Yun Chujo glared at her. Hold back your tears. Is crying useful? If it is, I will howl with you. The earth fissure hasn't spread to this place yet. Let's hurry and enter the dense forest ahead. Lan Luofang forcefully held back her tears and said, "Little Jiu, that is the blood curse miasma forest ahead. Not only is there a poisonous miasma, but it is said that this is a cursed forest. Very few people can pass through it alive." Yun Chujo had already guessed this point. After all, she had seen the map at Elder Tua's place. The blood-cursed miasma forest was no different from a peaceful land to her. But what about the people from the Land family? Should she care about it or not? At this time, the leaders of the other 3 families gathered together. Mu Kalu said with a hint of pride, "Everyone, don't panic. Our Mu family is good at alchemy. Although we don't have full confidence, as long as we take our Mu family's unique antidote pill, we can at least resolve 70 to 80% of the poison miasma." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.